Right now, you could reach into your pocket, pull out your phone, and watch a tiny blue dot find you on the surface of a spinning ball 40,000 kilometers around. You don't think twice about it. The size of the Earth is just a number you've always known, printed in every textbook, folded into every map on every screen you own. You take it for granted completely. But someone had to discover that number, and the way they did it should have been impossible. Here is the strangest part. The person who first measured the entire planet never traveled around it. He never even left the country he was standing in. He did it with a stick, a shadow, and one afternoon of arithmetic. The real story is far stranger than you'd think. His name was Eratosthenes. He was born around 276 BC in Syene, a Greek city on the coast of what is now Libya. He was clever in too many directions at once. He wrote poetry. He studied music. He worked on mathematics, on geography, on the stars. And around 245 BC, he was handed one of the most powerful jobs in the ancient world. He became the chief librarian of the Great Library of Alexandria in Egypt under the pharaoh Ptolemy III. That library was the closest thing the ancient world had to the entire internet, gathered into one building. Scrolls from every corner of the known world, almost everything anyone had ever written down, and Eratosthenes sat at the center of it, reading. His rivals were not impressed. They gave him a cruel nickname. They called him Beta, after the second letter of the Greek alphabet. The insult was simple. They were saying he was second best at everything, good at many things, the greatest at none. Imagine being mocked your whole career as the man who was almost brilliant. Now imagine what he did next. One day, Eratosthenes came across a strange report about a town far to the south called Syene. Today, you know it as Aswan, on the Nile. The report claimed that on one specific day each year, something impossible happened there. That day was the summer solstice. The solstice is simply the day the sun climbs higher in the sky than on any other day of the year. And at noon on the solstice in Syene, the report said, the sun stood so perfectly overhead that it lit the very bottom of a deep well, straight down, no angle at all. On that same day, a standing pole in Syene cast no shadow whatsoever, none. To most people that was a fun curiosity and nothing more. To Eratosthenes it was a thread, and he started pulling. Because he knew something the report did not mention. He knew that in Alexandria, far to the north, the sun never stood directly overhead, not even on the solstice. In Alexandria, a vertical pole at noon always cast a shadow. Sit with that for a second. Same sun, same day, same exact moment. One city has no shadow at all, and a city to the north has a clear one. How can the same sun do two different things at the same time? There is really only one answer. The ground between the two cities is not flat. It curves. If the Earth were a flat sheet, the sun's rays would strike every pole at the same angle, and every shadow would look the same everywhere at noon. The only way for Syene to have no shadow while Alexandria has one is if the surface beneath your feet is bending away. The Earth, Eratosthenes realized, is a ball. He was not the first Greek to suspect this. Thinkers before him had argued the Earth was round. But suspecting a thing and measuring it are two completely different acts. Eratosthenes wanted the number. He wanted to know exactly how big the ball was, and he understood that the shadow in Alexandria was hiding the answer. So he ran the experiment. On the solstice, at noon, in Alexandria, he measured the shadow of a gnomon. A gnomon is just an upright rod or stick stuck in the ground, the same kind of pointer that throws the shadow on a sundial. He measured how long the shadow was and how tall the stick was, and from those two lengths he worked out the angle of the sun. The angle came out to about 7 degrees. A little more, in truth, but close to 7. And here his mind did something beautiful. A full circle is 360 degrees. 7 degrees is roughly 1/50th of that full circle. So the angle of that little shadow in Alexandria was 1/50th of the way around the entire planet. Think about what that means. The slice of sky between the two cities, measured by a shadow, was 1/50th of the whole sphere. So the distance along the ground between Syene and Alexandria had to be 1/50th of the whole way around the Earth. Now he only needed one more thing: the distance between the two cities. We are not certain exactly how he got it. He may have used official surveyors, men trained to measure distance by counting their own paces with eerie consistency. He may have used the travel time of camel caravans or records the kingdom already kept. However he got it, the figure he used was 5,000 stadia. A stadion was an ancient Greek unit of distance, roughly the length of a stadium running track. Here is the honest problem. We do not know today exactly how long Eratosthenes' stadion was. The estimates range from about 150 meters to 185. That uncertainty matters, and we will come back to it. But the arithmetic itself was simple. If 5,000 stadia is 1/50th of the planet, then the whole planet is 50 times that. 5,000 times 50. 250,000 stadia. That was it. That was his answer for the circumference of the Earth. Circumference just means the distance all the way around. A man in a library had measured the size of the entire world without taking a single step toward the horizon. So how close was he? This is where it stops being a clever story and becomes something almost unbelievable. Depending on which length of the stadion you use, his answer lands somewhere between a fraction off and roughly 15% off. The real circumference of about 40,000 kilometers. By the most generous reading, using the shorter Egyptian stadion, he was within a few percent of the true value. A few percent. With a stick. In the 3rd century BC. We know about all of this largely because of a later Greek writer named Cleomedes, who described Eratosthenes' method in his own work on the heavens. The original writings of Eratosthenes on this were lost, like so much that passed through that library. The idea survived only because someone else thought it was worth copying down. Now, here is the twist that should bother you. Eratosthenes was right. Stunningly. Almost perfectly right. And then the world half forgot. Other scholars made their own attempts and got smaller answers. A philosopher named Posidonius, a couple of centuries later, measured the Earth using a bright star and arrived at a circumference that was too small. Later still, the great geographer Ptolemy adopted a shrunken figure as well, and those smaller wrong numbers were the ones that got copied and trusted and carried forward through the centuries. Fast forward almost 1,700 years. A sailor named Christopher Columbus is trying to convince a kingdom to fund a voyage west to reach Asia. To make his case, he leans on the small estimate of the Earth's size, not the large, correct one. He genuinely believes the planet is small enough that a short sail west will land him in the Indies. He was wrong. The Earth was as big as Eratosthenes had said all along. Columbus only survived because an entire pair of continents happened to be sitting in the gap he had underestimated. The right answer had been written down 17 centuries earlier. People simply trusted the wrong one. How often does that happen? The truth gets measured correctly, and then the convenient mistake wins anyway. So where does Eratosthenes live in your life right now? Pull the phone back out. Look at that blue dot again. For your phone to know where you are, It listens to a small fleet of satellites circling the planet, and it does a kind of geometry against them. That geometry only works if the device already knows the precise size and shape of the Earth. The number is built into the math. Every navigation system, every flight path, every map that has ever guided you home rests on knowing how big the ground beneath you really is. That knowledge did not come from a satellite. It started with a man the others called second best, standing in the shade of a stick, watching a shadow that should not have been there and refusing to look away. So the next time you glance down and watch that little blue dot find you on a ball 40,000 kilometers around, remember, you're not just looking at a map. You're holding the answer to a question a librarian asked 22 centuries ago, with nothing but a shadow and the nerve to take it seriously.